A billionaire invites his black chauffeur's daughter to play poker for fun, unaware that she is a child genius. Imagine this, a 10-year-old girl outsmarting one of the richest men in America at his own game. Stay tuned to Black Voices to see how this unfolds. The $5,000 poker chips trembled in businessman Richard Sterling's hands as he watched in disbelief at the 10-year-old girl sitting across the mahogany table. He had bet his Caribbean property on a single hand, convinced he was teaching his driver's sassy daughter a lesson in humility. "Are you sure you want to continue, Mr. Sterling?" asked Jade Williams, her calm voice contrasting sharply with a growing desperation in the eyes of the man who just 5 minutes earlier had been openly mocking her. The Beverly Hills mansion was deathly silent. The other party guests, tycoons, celebrities, and politicians had gathered around the table, realizing that something extraordinary was happening. A black girl from the suburbs was systematically destroying one of the richest men in the United States. Can you believe a child could turn the tables like this? Keep watching Black Voices to find out what happens next. Jade never imagined her Saturday afternoon would end like this. She had accompanied her father, Thomas Williams, to work because the babysitter hadn't shown up, and she should have stayed quietly in the kitchen doing her homework. But when the rich men began their malicious comments about people who don't know their place, something inside her woke up. "Look, Williams," Sterling had said to her father, laughing loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your little girl thinks she knows poker because she's seen it on TV. How about we teach her how the real world works?" What Sterling didn't know was that Jade had spent the last 3 years studying advanced mathematical probabilities in a free online program for gifted children. What he couldn't imagine was that she could calculate poker odds in her head faster than professional computers. "My daughter isn't bothering anyone," Thomas had replied politely, nervously clutching his car keys. "Don't worry," Sterling insisted, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "We'll play a simple game. If she wins, I'll double your salary. When you lose, you owe me an apology for raising such a presumptuous girl." Now, 45 minutes later, Sterling had lost his yacht, his country house in Aspen, and was about to bet something that would send his wife into a panic when she found out. Jade arranged her cards with the precision of a surgeon. Her dark eyes revealed a serenity that only exists in those born with a gift that transcends any limitations imposed by the prejudices of others. "Last chance, Mr. Sterling," she said, pushing all her chips toward the center of the table. "But this time, when I win, I want something different." If this story of talent versus prejudice is thrilling you, subscribe to Black Voices to discover how a 10-year-old girl turned a billionaire's arrogance into the most expensive lesson he's ever paid for in his life. Sterling laughed loudly, a harsh sound that echoed through the mansion's dining room. "Something different, girl? You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." He gestured to the other guests who gathered around like vultures sniffing carrion. "Guys, come see this. The chauffeur's little girl thinks she can teach me poker." "Richard, don't be cruel," murmured his wife, Victoria, but her tone betrayed more amusement than genuine concern. "The girl clearly doesn't understand what's going on." "I understand perfectly," Jade replied. Her voice as calm as a lake on a windless morning. "You bet your Caribbean property because you think a black girl from the suburbs couldn't have learned how to play poker properly." The silence that followed was deafening. Several guests exchanged uncomfortable glances, but Sterling just smiled more maliciously. "Exactly. And when you lose, I want your father to beg me for forgiveness for not teaching you respect and your place in society." Sterling turned to Thomas, who stood rigid against the wall. "Williams, your daughter needs to learn that insolence has consequences." What Sterling didn't know was that Jade had grown up watching her father being humiliated on a daily basis by men like him. Thomas Williams was an engineer, but after years of subtle discrimination in the job market, he had accepted driving for wealthy men as the only way to support his family. Jade had seen silent tears on her father's face when he thought she wasn't looking. What Sterling also didn't know was that at the age of 7, Jade had found a book on mathematical probability at the public library. While other children played with dolls, she memorized probability tables and calculated winning percentages. By 8, she had completely mastered the mathematics behind Texas Hold'em. By 9, she had read every poker strategy book available for free online. "I double the bet," Sterling announced, pushing more chips toward the center. My Malibu house, too. Total value, $15 million. He leaned over the table, his blue eyes flashing with cruelty. But when you lose, in addition to an apology, I want your family to leave town permanently. Richard, Victoria whispered, now genuinely shocked. You can't be serious. I'm very serious. This boy needs to learn about social hierarchy. Sterling looked directly at Thomas. And you, Williams, need to learn how to raise your daughter better. Jade watched her father's face contort with pain and humiliation. It was at that moment that something changed in her dark eyes. It wasn't anger. It was something much more dangerous. It was the cold determination of someone who had found the exact moment to make up for years of accumulated injustices. I accept your terms, she said calmly. But when I win, and I will win, I want him to kneel before my father and beg his forgiveness for every humiliation he has inflicted on him over the past 5 years. The room erupted in laughter. Margaret Ashworth, wife of a senator, clutched her stomach, laughing so hard. Oh my God, Richard, she really thinks she can win. And I want it recorded, Jade continued, ignoring the laughter, and posted on all your social media with a detailed explanation of how a 60-year-old man lost $15 million to a 10-year-old girl because he underestimated someone's intelligence based on the color of their skin. The laughter died instantly. Sterling turned red with rage. You, how dare you? I'm just stating the terms of the bet you proposed, Jade replied with the patience of someone explaining basic concepts to a child. Are you afraid of losing to a 10-year-old black girl? The other guests whispered among themselves, clearly uncomfortable now. This had gone far beyond a humbling lesson, and had entered genuinely dangerous territory for Sterling's reputation. You're on, Sterling growled. But you'll learn that the real world is no place for dreamers like you. Jade organized her cards with precise movements, calculating probabilities at the speed of a quantum computer. Sterling had kings and queens, a strong hand by any normal standard. But Jade had something that made her heart race discreetly. Last chance to surrender, girl, Sterling offered, his voice dripping with condescension. You can back out now and just suffer a little embarrassment. Thanks for the offer, Jade replied politely. But I'd rather stick around for the part where you realize that underestimating people based on their appearance has been the biggest mistake you've ever made. Sterling laid his cards on the table with absolute confidence. A pair of kings with a high queen, an excellent hand that would beat 90% of players in any normal situation. But when all eyes turned to Jade, expecting to see disappointment and defeat, she simply smiled. A small, almost imperceptible smile, but one that carried the weight of a storm about to break over everything Sterling believed about superiority and privilege. For a moment, when Sterling saw that smile, a twinge of nervousness shot through his chest. But he ignored it, convinced that a girl couldn't have learned to bluff with such sophistication. What he didn't know was that Jade wasn't bluffing. She was about to reveal something that would turn his arrogance into a public nightmare. Jade turned her cards slowly, one by one, as if revealing a secret she had kept for years. 5 of diamonds. 6 of diamonds. 7 of diamonds. 8 of diamonds. And finally, 9 of diamonds. A straight flush that froze Sterling's blood in his veins. The room fell into complete silence. Sterling blinked several times as if his retinas were deceiving him. A straight flush from 5 to 9 of diamonds, one of the rarest hands in poker with a probability of approximately 0.0014%. That's impossible, Sterling stammered, his voice reduced to a choked whisper. A child can't. A child can't what, Mr. Sterling? Jade asked politely, arranging her cards in perfect symmetry on the table. Can't count cards? Can't calculate probabilities? Or can't simply be smarter than a rich white man? Victoria Sterling covered her mouth with her hands, her eyes darting between the cards on the table and her husband's pale face. Margaret Ashworth stopped laughing abruptly as if she had swallowed her tongue. What no one in that room knew was that Jade had spent the last 3 years doing much more than studying math online. She had discovered something that would forever change her understanding of probability and strategy. But first, she had to reveal how she had gotten there. Dad, Jade said calmly, not taking her eyes off Sterling.
Do you remember that night you came home crying because Mr. Sterling humiliated you in front of the other drivers?
Thomas, who until then had remained silent, leaning against the wall, felt his stomach churn.
Jade, there's no need.
Yes, I do, she insisted with a firmness in her voice that made everyone in the room pay attention. You came home, and I heard you crying in the bathroom. You were crying because he said that people like us should be grateful for cleaning up the filth of people like him. Sterling tried to interrupt her, but Jade raised her hand with surprising authority for a 10-year-old girl. That night, while you thought I was asleep, I turned on the computer in the library and started researching you, Mr. Sterling.
I found out about your businesses, your properties, your habits.
Jade paused, letting the words sink in.
And I found out that you have a particular weakness for gambling, especially when you underestimate your opponents.
Sterling's face was now completely red.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
I have every idea, Jade replied. I found out that in the last 2 years, you've lost approximately $3 million in Las Vegas casinos. I found out that your wife knows nothing about these losses.
And I found out something even more interesting.
You have a very predictable pattern of behavior when you play poker. Jade rose from her chair and walked over to a bookshelf, pulling out a tablet she had hidden behind some books. Excuse me, Mr. Sterling, but I took the liberty of recording our entire game.
The blood drained from Sterling's face. You couldn't have.
I can, and I did. Jade tapped the screen and turned the device so everyone could see it. 45 minutes of footage showing a 60-year-old man betting $15 million against a 10-year-old, using explicitly racist language and threatening to drive a family out of town out of sheer arrogance. Victoria looked at her husband with growing horror. Richard, tell me she's lying. But Jade wasn't finished. The most interesting thing, Mr. Sterling, is that I've discovered you've been behaving like this for years.
You humiliate your employees. You make irresponsible bets.
And you always underestimate people you consider inferior.
Thomas stepped forward, finally understanding what his daughter had planned.
Jade, how did you?
Remember Dr. Peterson, Dad?
The college math professor who tutors me online. Jade smiled for the first time since the cat was out of the bag. I discovered that he specializes in game theory and behavioral analysis. Over the past 6 months, I've studied not only the rules of poker, but specifically the psychological patterns of arrogant players like Mr. Sterling. Dr. Peterson taught me that men like you, Mr. Sterling, follow very predictable patterns. Jade continued, you bet big when you feel superior, especially against women and minorities. You make humiliating offers because you believe intimidation is synonymous with power, and you always underestimate the intelligence of those you consider different. Sterling tried to speak, but only muffled sounds came out of his throat. But most importantly, Jade said, tapping the tablet again.
Dr. Peterson taught me to document.
All of our conversations over the past 6 months have been recorded, including the sessions where we analyzed public videos of you playing at charity events, identifying exactly how you react when you're losing. Margaret Ashworth whispered to her husband.
We have to get out of here now.
Don't go anywhere, Jade said calmly. Because you all laughed when Mr. Sterling made racist comments about my family. You all thought it was funny to see a grown man humiliate a child. So, you're all going to stay until the end. Jade returned to the tablet and showed a series of screenshots.
This is my social media account, Mr. Sterling.
I have over 50,000 followers, mainly math students and people interested in cases of social prejudice. And this, she tapped a button, is a live stream that started exactly when our poker game began. The horror in Sterling's eyes was palpable.
Now, you can't.
That's blackmail.
It's not blackmail, Jade corrected patiently. It's documentation of social injustice and discrimination. Exactly the kind of content Dr. Peterson taught me to collect for case studies on systemic bias.
Thomas looked at his daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. His little girl had planned this with surgical precision, but the consequences could be enormous.
How many people are watching? Victoria asked, her voice trembling. Jade looked at the tablet. Currently, 17,400, and the number is growing rapidly because my followers are sharing it on other platforms. Sterling finally exploded. Stop this immediately. You have no idea of the consequences. I have lawyers. I have influence. I can destroy your family. With what money, Mr. Sterling? Jade asked innocently. Because technically, after this game, you owe me $15 million. And considering your previous gambling losses, I imagine your liquidity is a little compromised. At that moment, something even more devastating happened. Sterling's phone began to ring insistently. First, one call, then two, then 5 simultaneous calls. I think it's your investors, Jade observed. Dr. Peterson explained to me that when men in positions of power are exposed publicly, the financial consequences tend to come very quickly. Sterling answered one of the calls with trembling hands. The voice on the other end was loud enough for everyone to hear. Richard, what the hell is going on? Half of our clients are canceling contracts after seeing you gamble against a child on a live stream. Jade waited patiently while Sterling tried to explain the situation over the phone, his voice growing increasingly desperate. When he finally hung up, she said softly, Mr. Sterling, would you like to review the terms of our bet? When I won, and I did win, you would kneel before my father and beg him for forgiveness for every humiliation, and that would be recorded and posted on all your social media accounts. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of Sterling's phone ringing again and again and again. Under that storm of angry calls and horrified stares, Jade remained as calm as a lake on a windless morning. But anyone who looked into her eyes would notice something that would make even the most powerful reconsider their entire understanding of underestimating people based on appearances. There was a determination there that had been forged through years of silent injustice and was now finding its voice through the universal language that men like Sterling understood best: devastating financial consequences and irreversible public humiliation. Mr. Sterling, Jade said calmly as his phone rang for the 10th time in a row. Would you like to honor our bet now, or would you prefer to explain to your investors why you are breaking a public agreement broadcast live? Sterling looked around like a cornered animal. Victoria had her face hidden in her hands. Margaret had discreetly moved to the far corner, and Thomas watched everything with a mixture of pride and concern for what his daughter had unleashed. This is crazy, Sterling muttered. But his voice sounded weak and shaky. You're just a girl. A little girl who just won you $15 million in a legal poker game witnessed by 8 people and broadcast to. Jade checked the tablet, 23,400 people right now. The phone rang again. Sterling picked it up with trembling hands. Hello, Richard. It's me, Peterson, from the board of directors. What the hell are you doing? The phones won't stop ringing. Clients are canceling contracts. Shareholders are furious. The voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. I can explain. Explain what? That you gambled company property on a child? That you made racist comments on a public broadcast? Richard, you have 1 hour to resolve this, or the board will vote for your immediate dismissal. Sterling hung up and looked at Jade with pure hatred. You have no idea what you just did. I'm going to sue you and your family. I'm going to. With what lawyers? Jade interrupted politely. Because I imagine that your financial resources will be a little unavailable after the $15 million is transferred to my account. That's when something devastating happened. Jade's tablet beeped. She looked at the screen and smiled. Oh, how interesting. Dr. Peterson just sent me an update. Jade showed the screen to Sterling. Apparently, the Securities and Exchange Commission has launched an investigation into your companies based on our broadcast. Something about irresponsible gambling with corporate funds. Sterling's face turned gray. That's impossible. They can't. They can. And they are. Look, Jade swiped her finger across the screen, 3,200 shares in the last 2 hours. The video already has 57,000 views. And what a coincidence. Your name is trending on Twitter. Sterling tried to grab the tablet, but Jade gently pushed it away. Ah, we haven't fulfilled our bet yet, remember? You'll kneel before my father and beg him for forgiveness for every humiliation. Never, Sterling hissed. It's okay, Jade said cheerfully. Dr. Peterson explained to me that when people refuse to honor public agreements, especially those involving racial discrimination, civil proceedings tend to be, how did he put it? Oh, yes. Astronomically expensive. Sterling's phone exploded with simultaneous calls. Victoria finally looked up. Richard, for God's sake, do what she asks before this completely destroys our family. My wife is right, Margaret whispered from a corner. My husband has already called me. Our friends are distancing themselves from any association with us. Sterling looked at Thomas, who had remained silent throughout the situation. Williams, you know I've always treated you well. Always treated me well? Thomas finally said, his voice heavy with years of contained humiliation. Mr. Sterling, you've made me work on holidays without extra pay. You called me boy when I was 45 years old. You told me in front of other employees that I should be grateful for cleaning your car. Jade watched her father's eyes fill with tears, and something in her expression hardened. Dr. Peterson taught me something important, Mr. Sterling. He said that men like you only learn with a language you understand best, financial consequences and public humiliation. She tapped the tablet again. Transmission still active. Current audience, 31,000 people. And look, I just got a message from 3 different TV networks requesting interviews. Sterling slumped heavily into a chair. His arrogance had evaporated completely, replaced by pure panic. What do you want from me? Exactly what we agreed. You get down on your knees, apologize to my father for years of discrimination, and that gets recorded and posted on your social media with a full explanation. And if I do that, you'll stop the broadcast? Jade tilted her head, thinking it over. The broadcast will continue until we complete our agreement. After that, well, the content will already be on the internet. Dr. Peterson always says the internet never forgets. Sterling looked at his wife, who only shook her head in despair. He looked at Margaret, who was avoiding his gaze. Finally, with mechanical movements, he rose from the chair. Thomas, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. On your knees, Jade corrected firmly, as agreed. Sterling hesitated for a moment, then knelt before Thomas Williams. The tears streaming down the face of the most powerful man in the city were not tears of regret, but of pure humiliation. Thomas Williams, I apologize for treating you with disrespect, for racial discrimination. He paused, sobbing. Continue, Jade said calmly, recording everything on her tablet. For the comments about our family not knowing our place in society. For the public humiliation, for using your position of power to belittle a man better than you. Sterling repeated every word, his voice breaking with each sentence. When he finished, Jade turned off the recording and immediately posted it on Sterling's social media accounts, which she had hacked during the weeks of preparation. Done, she announced. Deal done. Sterling remained on his knees, completely broken. His phone exploded with notifications, comments, reactions, shares. Within minutes, the video of him kneeling was spreading across the internet faster than wildfire. How, he whispered. How could a 10-year-old girl? Dr. Peterson taught me that intelligence has no age, Mr. Sterling, and that underestimating people based on their appearance is always the first mistake of the arrogant. Jade helped her father to his feet and headed for the door. Let's go home, Dad. You don't work here anymore. Wait, Sterling shouted from the floor. You can't leave me like this. Jade paused at the door and turned back one last time. Mr. Sterling, you bet that a black girl from the suburbs couldn't be smarter than a rich white man. You lost. Now face the consequences like an adult. As father and daughter walked out the front door of the mansion, the sound of Sterling's phone rang incessantly in the empty house. Victoria had locked herself in her room. Margaret had left through the back door,
and he was left alone on the marble floor of his own dining room. Outside, Jade took her father's hand as they walked to the car. "Dad, tomorrow, we're going to find a labor lawyer. Dr. Peterson said that publicly proven discrimination leads to very generous settlements." Thomas laughed for the first time in years. "My daughter, how did you plan all this?" Dr. Peterson always says that the best revenge against systematic injustice is to use the system itself against those who manipulate it. Sterling bet on his own arrogance. "I just let him hang himself with his own rope." In the back seat of the car, as Thomas drove away from the mansion for the last time as an employee, Jade checked the notifications on her tablet. The video had surpassed 100,000 views. 3 television networks had confirmed interviews, and most importantly, 7 companies had already offered jobs to Thomas Williams, the father of the genius girl who humiliated the racist billionaire. But one question remained unanswered as they drove through the night. How could a 10-year-old girl turn this initial victory into something even bigger? Dr. Peterson always said that true geniuses don't stop at the first victory, but build empires. And for Jade Williams, that night had been just the first move in a game much longer and more ambitious than anyone in that mansion could have imagined. 6 months later, Thomas Williams was sitting in his new office on the 15th floor of a skyscraper in the city center. The sign on the door read Thomas Williams, Director of Human Resources, Morrison and Associates. The irony was not lost on him. The man who used to drive cars for billionaires now ran the hiring policies for one of the largest companies in the region. "Dad, 3 more offers for interviews have come in," Jade announced, entering the office with a stack of letters. At 11, she now used her mathematical talent in a much more ambitious way than poker. Her online math academy for disadvantaged children already had over 5,000 registered students. "And how's our friend Sterling doing?" Thomas asked, even though he already knew the answer. Jade checked her tablet. "He completely ruined himself last week. The mansion was auctioned off. Victoria filed for divorce and moved to France. His companies closed after investors discovered his gambling debts." She paused. "Margaret Ashworth lost her seat on the board because no one else wants to be associated with someone who was at that party." Dr. Peterson had become Jade's official partner, helping her turn the Sterling case into a national movement against corporate discrimination. The video of the humiliation had generated 17 million views and inspired similar complaints across the country. "Sterling did me a favor," Jade said, staring out the window. "He showed me that powerful people only respect financial consequences and public exposure. Now I use that to help other families." At that moment, the phone rang. It was Sterling. "Williams, I need a job," he said, his voice broken and desperate. "Anything. I've lost everything." "Our company does a full background check," Thomas replied calmly, "including social media behavior. We have entry-level positions available. Minimum wage, no benefits. Cleaning assistant, 6 a.m. I'll take it. Anything." After hanging up, Jade smiled. "I think he finally understands the social hierarchy." "The best revenge isn't destroying your enemies," Thomas said, watching the movement on the street. "It's building something so big that they become irrelevant." That night, as they ate dinner in their modest apartment, they had decided not to move to a bigger place. Jade said, "Thank you for teaching me that being underestimated is an advantage. Arrogant people always reveal their weaknesses to those they think don't matter." "And what have you learned from all this?" "That intelligence without character is just cunning, but intelligence with purpose can change the world." Today, Sterling works as a night cleaner and earns in a month what he used to spend on a meal. Jade turned discrimination into a social movement studied in universities. The lesson? The powerful only remain powerful as long as they underestimate the intelligence of those who are different. When someone decides to end that dynamic, it doesn't matter how many millions you have. Arrogance will always be your Achilles heel. If you've been inspired by this story of how a girl turned injustice into fuel to achieve extraordinary things, subscribe to Black Voices to discover more real-life stories of people who rewrote the rules when they were underestimated.